The night it all finally broke was ordinary in every way that mattered, and that is what haunts me the most. Rain on the balcony rail, news murmuring in the background, two plates on the coffee table, one getting cold. Maya sat at the end of the couch, legs tucked under her, scrolling on her phone with that half-smile she used to reserve for me. She laughed once under her breath, not loud, just a quiet exhale that felt like a door closing. "Long day?" I asked, more out of habit than curiosity. She answered, eyes never leaving the screen. Her fork pushed pasta around but never lifted it. Her body was here, but whatever life she was living had drifted somewhere else weeks ago. That was how it had been, piece by piece, conversations shrinking, dinners turning into parallel silences. Her phone, once abandoned on counters and tables, now glued to her palm like a second pulse. I told myself it was work. The new project, the demanding clients. The city we lived in was built on overwork and glowing screens after all, but there was a different kind of brightness in her eyes when her phone lit up. Not stress, not annoyance, something softer. Something that did not include me. I noticed the tiny changes first. Her perfume on a Tuesday when she usually rushed out in a hoodie. The way she checked her reflection twice before leaving. The way she started sitting with her back slightly turned to me, as if she was trying to protect something fragile and secret glowing in her hands. One evening, she came home later than usual. Rain clung to her hair, and her cheeks carried the flushed warmth of indoor laughter, not the tired, drained look of a long office night. She smelled like a bar that was too expensive for our budget and cologne that wasn't mine. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She blinked like she had forgotten where she was. "Yeah, just late meeting. I'm exhausted." She pressed a quick kiss to my cheek. Her lips were warm, but her eyes had already moved past me, toward the bedroom, toward her phone charger. That night I lay awake, listening to the faint tapping of her fingers against glass, the soft buzz of incoming messages. The way she turned slightly away from me even in sleep, her back a quiet, curved wall. I wanted to trust her, wanted to believe I was imagining things. People online call it emotional cheating, like adding an adjective makes it less of a wound. But what I felt was simple. The woman I loved was offering the most tender parts of herself to someone else, somewhere else, while I lay a few inches away in the dark. The quiet discovery did not come with shouting or dramatic revelations. It happened on a Sunday morning, with gray light filling the apartment and the hum of distant traffic under our floor like a restless heartbeat. She was in the shower, her phone for once buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it. I didn't mean to, the sound just pulled my eyes. The screen lit up with his name, Elias. Not a coworker I'd heard of, not a cousin, not a group chat, just Elias, followed by a preview of the message. "Last night I can still feel your." The rest blurred as my vision tightened around the words. I did not read further. I didn't need to. The shape of betrayal fit perfectly into that one unfinished sentence. The shower stopped. Steam rolled out from the bathroom, bringing with it the smell of her shampoo, the familiarity of all our mornings. Except now, our life felt like a set someone forgot to strike after the actors went home. I put the phone down exactly where it had been. My hands were shaking, but quietly, the way a building trembles inside its walls before anyone outside notices. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. She stepped out in a towel, humming. Her hair dripped onto the hardwood. "Hey," she said softly, noticing my posture. "You okay?" I looked up at her and there was a moment, one suspended, fragile second, where I could have pretended. Could have swallowed it, could have taken the wound and hidden it somewhere, let it bleed in private. Instead, the words left my mouth before I had time to soften them. "Who is Elias?" Her face drained of color, so fast it was like watching a sunset in reverse. The humming stopped. The towel slipped slightly at her shoulder, but she didn't move to adjust it. "What?" she whispered. "Your phone." I forced myself to hold her gaze. "Who is he?" The air between us thickened. No shouting, no dramatic denial. Just the sound of water still dripping from her hair onto the floor, tiny dark stains appearing one by one. She looked at the phone on the nightstand, then back at me. Something in her eyes broke, quietly, like glass cracking under pressure. "I was going to tell you," she said. Those were her first words. Not, "It's not what you think." Not, "You're overreacting." Just a confession wrapped in delayed honesty. "How long?" I asked, my voice sounding unfamiliar, thin. She sat down on the edge of the bed, far enough that our shoulders did not touch. She stared at her hands. "A few months," she answered. Her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. "A few months," I repeated, tasting the timeline, the birthdays. The dinners, the mornings we shared coffee, while she typed "I miss you" messages to someone else across the city. "Did you sleep with him?" The question sat heavy between us. She flinched, closed her eyes, nodded once. The rain outside picked up, streaking the window in long, watery lines. The city went on, indifferent, cars passing, people heading somewhere that wasn't here, wasn't this room where my life was quietly being rearranged without my consent. I didn't mean for it to happen, she began, and something inside me recoiled. Don't, I said more sharply than I expected. Silence flooded the room. She swallowed. He listened, when you were busy, when we were distant. Her words crumbled halfway through the sentence. The worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was realizing how easily my absence in small moments had made room for him. Those nights I thought I was giving her space, staying late at work to provide. She was crossing invisible lines with a man who made her feel seen in the way I had forgotten how. You could have told me you were lonely, I murmured. She looked at me with eyes full of a pain that was not only guilt. Her voice was almost inaudible. I didn't know how. The steam in the room faded, leaving only the chill of damp air. She sat there in a towel, dripping water and secrets onto the floor. I sat beside her, fully clothed, feeling more exposed than she was. What do you want me to do with this? I asked. Her lips parted, but no answer came. Somewhere in the hallway, the radiator clicked on, filling the silence with soft metal sighs. We sat like that for a long time, not touching, not talking, just sharing the same broken morning. Finally, I stood up. The room swayed for a moment, as if the apartment itself was adjusting to its new reality. I need to get ready, I said. For what I didn't know, for work, for leaving, for collapsing somewhere no one could see. She watched me walk to the closet, her eyes tracing each step like this might be the last time she saw this version of me. When I reached for my shirt, she spoke again, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. Are you going to leave? I paused, hand resting on the hanger. The question was simple. The answer was not. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see her out of the corner of my eye. Her shoulders had dropped. Her fingers dug into the towel, knuckles pale. There was fear in her voice, but also an acceptance, like she already knew what she had set in motion. I don't know, I said. But the truth, sharp and unspoken, was already forming in my chest, building toward the moment that would come sooner than either of us was ready for. The moment I would walk out of that door and not say a single word. Leaving did not happen with suitcases and slammed doors. It happened quietly, like most endings do. 2 days after that morning, I woke up before dawn. The city still slept, the rain reduced to a fine mist against the window. Maya lay beside me, curled on her side, facing away. Her breathing was uneven, like even in sleep she could not find a steady rhythm anymore. I watched her for a long time, memorizing the curve of her shoulder, the way her hair fanned across the pillow. I got dressed in the gray light. Jeans, sweater, no tie, no work bag. I moved slowly, not wanting to wake her, yet hoping she would stir, ask where I was going, give me a reason to stay and fight. She didn't. Not when I picked up my keys, not when I lingered at the bedroom door. The apartment felt hollow as I walked through it, the mug on the sink with a faint ring of coffee at the bottom, her scarf hanging on the back of the chair. The plant on the windowsill she always forgot to water, somehow still alive. I stood in the doorway for a moment and looked back. No note, no message, just absence heavy and absolute. Then I stepped out. Closed the door softly behind me, left without a word. The hallway smelled like dust and old paint. The elevator hummed as it descended, each floor a quiet countdown. In the lobby, the security guard nodded at me, unaware that I was carrying the weight of a broken marriage in an overnight bag. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. The streets shone slick with leftover rain, reflecting the pale early light like a city trying on a new skin. I walked with no real destination, just away. For a while I stayed in a cheap serviced apartment near the river, small kitchenette, thin walls, a bed that didn't remember the shape of our bodies. The first nights were sleepless. I lay on the unfamiliar mattress, listening to muffled footsteps in the hallway, the distant sirens, the refrigerator's intermittent buzzing. Every sound felt louder without her breathing beside me. Grief doesn't arrive like in the movies, all at once, perfectly timed to a sad song. It comes in stuttering waves. One moment I was numb, scrolling through news I didn't care about. The next, I was doubled over with a pain that felt physical, searching my memories for the exact moment everything shifted. Her toothbrush still stood next to mine in my mind's bathroom. Her laugh echoed in the shape of the apartment I no longer slept in. I kept unlocking my phone to message her, muscle memory overriding logic. Then I would remember Elia's, and my hands would freeze above the screen. I never replied to her first messages. They started that same morning. Where are you? Did you go to work early? Please talk to me. They lit up my phone like flares in the dark, but I watched them from a distance, too burned to approach. That week I lived in routines. Coffee from the corner shop, work, walk back along the river even when it rained, letting the drizzle soak my hair, my clothes, as if the sky was trying to wash something off me I couldn't name. At night, though, my mind circled back to him. To Elia's, I imagined him everywhere, sitting across from her in some dim bar, listening with an intensity I had stopped offering, leaning in, his hand touching hers on the table. Texting her late at night, filling the emptiness I never knew she felt so deeply. Was he taller than me, funnier, more attentive? Did he know the way she curled her toes when she laughed too hard, the way she added cinnamon to her coffee when she was stressed? The questions were knives. I tortured myself with them. One night, after too much coffee and not enough food, I did the thing I swore I wouldn't. I scrolled through her public social media, not to confront her, not to talk, just to understand the shape of the life she was living while I drowned in the echo of ours. There he was, buried in a group photo from some gallery opening, tagged casually, his smile easy. His arm not quite touching her, but close enough to promise he had and would again. I clicked his profile. Graphic designer, lived across town. Photos of street art, late nights, carefully framed coffee cups and sunsets over the river. He looked like the kind of man who noticed details. The kind of man who would listen when she said she felt stuck. The kind of man I used to be before our future turned into a checklist. For days, I replayed their imagined conversations more than our real ones. What did she tell him about me? Did she paint me as distant, cold? Did she mention the nights I came home late with tired eyes and a tired smile, believing I was doing it for us? My friends noticed I was off, but I kept the story short. "We're taking some space," I said. The phrase tasted sterile, as if this was mutual, as if her body hadn't already crossed an invisible line weeks before I even knew there was a boundary to protect. Work became a refuge and a punishment, designing presentations, answering emails, joining video calls. I was there but not really there, my voice steady while something inside had caved in. The traces of the affair followed me even in the new apartment. A stray hair on the sleeve of my jacket that I pulled off the chair from the old place. The faint smell of her perfume when I opened my duffel. A receipt in my pocket from the restaurant we'd gone to a month before she slept with him. The worst was the first time I woke up reaching for her. My hand hit empty sheets and the absence shocked me awake. The silence of the room roared. That morning, her name flashed on my screen again. "Please, can we talk? I know you saw the messages. I'm sorry. I ended it with him." That line stuck. I ended it with him. My chest tightened. Some irrational, hopeful part of me flared up at the words. As if breaking it off now, after all the lies, could undo the fact that she had given him a version of herself she had locked away from me for months. But even in my pain, there was a cruel kind of clarity. She wasn't telling me because she wanted to free me from the burden of imagining them. She was telling me because she wanted the chance to keep me. A few more days passed. The city shifted from late winter into that in-between season where the air sharpens but doesn't quite warm. My body adjusted to the new bed, but my mind didn't. One evening, I found myself outside our old building without remembering how I'd gotten there. My feet had carried me through streets we used to walk together, past the cafe where she loved the almond croissants, past the little bookstore where we once argued over which plant to buy even though neither of us knew how to keep one alive. I stood on the opposite sidewalk and looked up at our window. The light was on. The outline of our curtains, no, her curtains now, glowed pale against the glass. Was she alone? Was she thinking of me? Was she scrolling through old photos, or was she waiting for his messages again out of habit? I didn't go up, didn't text, just watched the building, hands in my pockets, feeling like a ghost haunting his own life. Rain began to fall, gentle at first, then more insistent. Drops soaked through my jacket, chilled my skin. I stayed until the cold reached my bones. When I finally turned to leave, my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. "I saw you from the window. Please don't just disappear." There it was, the thing I had been doing, disappearing. Not with slammed doors, not with blocked numbers, but with silence so complete it felt like cruelty. I pocketed my phone and kept walking. Back at the serviced apartment, the air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and someone else's dinner from down the hall. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone. Disappearing felt like the only power I had left. She had chosen someone else, chosen to share her late nights, her secrets, her body with him. Leaving without a word was my rebellion, my final, quiet statement. "You don't get to break me and then dictate how I heal." But in the stillness of that room, surrounded by bland furniture and gray light, another truth emerged. Silence doesn't heal, it just hides the wound. My fingers hovered over her name. I typed out a message, then deleted it. Typed again, deleted again. Finally, I wrote one line, "We'll talk, not yet." Then I put the phone face down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the rain tapped the window in slow, uneven patterns, like someone trying to speak a language made entirely of regret. I closed my eyes and saw her face from that morning again, the shock, the guilt, the way she asked, "Are you going to leave?" without really believing I would. She thought she knew me, thought I would stay like I always had, thought that my love would be stronger than my hurt. Maybe it still was. But that night in that small apartment, with the city humming softly around me and her words echoing in my chest, I understood something I had been avoiding. There would come a day when I would have to face her again, to look her in the eyes, to hear her say his name out loud, to decide who I was going to be after all of this. I didn't know when that day would be, only that it was coming. And that when it did, nothing we said to each other would fit neatly back into the life we once shared. It took 3 weeks before she showed up at my door. By then, the serviced apartment had started to feel less like a hotel room and more like a holding pattern. The coffee mugs were mine now, not borrowed. My jacket lived on the back of the same chair. The plant from our old windowsill sat on the counter in a chipped mug, valiantly surviving in unfamiliar light. I was rinsing dishes when someone knocked. 3 soft, hesitant taps. My chest tightened. No one visited me here. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Maya stood in the hallway, wrapped in her oversized gray coat, hair pulled into a messy knot like she had rushed, like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were swollen, circled in the kind of tired you don't fix with rest. "Hi," she said. The word was small, almost swallowed by the hum of distant traffic and the flickering light above the corridor. I didn't step aside yet. Didn't invite her in, just held the door halfway open and looked at the woman I used to call home. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. She swallowed, fingers twisting in the strap of her bag. "You said we'd talk. I didn't know when that meant, and I'm sorry if this is too soon or too late or—" Her words trailed off. Her eyes darted past me, into the apartment, taking in the small space that had become my refuge. The plant on the counter, the shirt draped over a chair, the evidence that I was building a life without her. "Can I come in?" she asked. Silence stretched between us. I thought about all the things that didn't happen when she chose him. The conversations we skipped, the warnings we ignored, the version of us that might have survived if either of us had been braver sooner. I stepped back. "Yeah," I said, "come in." She walked past me slowly, like stepping into a museum exhibit of our old life in miniature. Her gaze lingered on the plant. "You took it," she murmured. "You always forgot to water it," I replied. The line came out more gently than I felt. She turned to face me, arms wrapped around herself. "This place is quiet," she said, as if she was describing more than the room. "It's enough," I answered. We stood there, an arm's length apart, feeling the weight of everything unsaid pressing in from all sides. "I ended it with him," she blurted, the words tumbling out in a rush, as if rehearsed in the mirror too many times. I nodded once slowly. "So you texted." She flinched at the distance in my voice. "It wasn't." She stopped herself, took a breath. "I'm not going to stand here and pretend it wasn't what it was. I cheated. I lied. I broke something I can't fix." Her voice cracked on the last word. That honesty, raw and unadorned, made it harder, not easier. "Why him?" I asked. The question had lived in my chest like a stone. Now it rolled out, heavy and inevitable. She inhaled, eyes glistening. "I was lonely," she said quietly. "And I didn't know how to tell you that without feeling ungrateful. We had this life you worked so hard for. The apartment, your job, the plans. And I felt small inside it. Like there was less and less space for the parts of me that weren't productive or useful." Her voice dropped further. "I met him at that gallery opening Sienna dragged me to. We started talking about nothing important. Movies, music. He asked how I was and actually waited for the whole answer. I didn't mean for it to become anything. It just kept going. Messages, calls, jokes. Then the line blurred. "So you crossed it," I said. "Yes." She forced herself to hold my gaze. "Nobody forced me. I chose it. And every time I told myself it would stop, that I would stop, I didn't. I let it happen because it felt good to be seen again. That doesn't make it right. It just makes it true." The room felt smaller. The light from the single window painted her face in muted winter colors. There were tears in her eyes, but she was not performing them. If anything, she looked like she was trying to hold them back. "You could have told me you were unhappy," I said softly. "I tried," she whispered. "Little ways, asking if you could come home earlier, saying I missed you. Joking about how we never talk anymore. And when you were tired or distracted, I told myself I was asking for too much. So I stopped asking out loud and started asking in the wrong place." The words settled between us. There was no version of this where I walked away unscathed, even if we never met Elias. "I'm not blameless," I admitted. It surprised both of us how easily it came out. "I checked out. I thought providing was enough. I thought your quiet meant content, not lonely. I didn't see how small you felt because I was too busy feeling big in all the wrong ways." She blinked, tears slipping over her lashes. "You didn't make me cheat," she said firmly. "I need you to hear that. I chose to cross that line. You didn't put my hand on the door. I did." The simplicity of that acknowledgement sliced through some of the fog. She wasn't here to rewrite the story, to spread blame until it diluted everything. She was here to own the damage. "Why end it with him?" I asked, suddenly guilty. Her jaw tensed. "I was guilty from the beginning," she said. "Every time I kissed you goodnight after talking to him. Every time I laughed at his messages while sitting across from you at dinner. I carried it like a second heartbeat. But when you said his name, when I saw the way you looked at me, I realized I'd been pretending there was still a version of us where this hadn't happened. Ending it with him was the first honest thing I'd done in months." "Did you love him?" The question came out hoarse. She looked down, took a long breath, then met my eyes. "I loved the way he made me feel," she said. "Seen, exciting, new. But him, the real him, I don't even know if I know that person. I knew his stories, his jokes, his attention. I didn't know how he handled disappointment, or boredom, or the grind of everyday life. What we had was real enough to hurt you, but not deep enough to survive clarity." Silence settled again. The radiator clinked in the corner, filling the pauses like an awkward third party. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She exhaled, shoulders slumping. "Not forgiveness," she said. "Not yet, maybe not ever. I came because disappearing without giving you the chance to say what you need to say, that felt like another betrayal. I want to answer any questions you have. I want you to see that I know what I've done. And if there's any part of you that can imagine us rebuilding, even as something different, I wanted to leave that door unlocked." "Unlocked doesn't mean open," I replied. She nodded. "I know." For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Her eyes were familiar and strange all at once. The woman I fell in love with, and the stranger who had shared my vows with someone else lived in the same face. "Where is he now?" I asked, her mouth twisted. "He texted, called. I told him it was over, that I was going to try to save my marriage if there was anything left to save. He didn't fight me. I think it was always easier for him. Less to lose." A quiet anger flared in me at the thought. How convenient to slip in, consume the best parts of her, then step back into his own life without the fallout I was drowning in. "Do you regret him?" I asked. She thought for a long time. "I regret what I did to you," she said finally. "I regret how it changed your eyes when you look at me. I regret the version of us I killed. But regret doesn't erase the fact that I was that lonely, that unseen, that I was capable of this. I can't pretend that part of me doesn't exist anymore." Her honesty was a double-edged sword. It kept me from dismissing her as a villain, but it also made it impossible to hate her cleanly. She took a tentative step closer. "Can I ask you something?" she said. I nodded. "Do you still love me?" The question landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through everything. I searched myself. Through the rage, the hurt, the disbelief. Beneath all of it, there was still a thread that tied me to her. Love twisted into something unrecognizable, but not entirely gone. "Yes," I said, my voice rough, "but it doesn't feel the same. It feels older, tired, like a house after a fire. The foundation is there, but everything on top of it is charred." She bit her lip, tears spilling freely now. "That's more than I deserve," she whispered. We stood so close I could see the freckles on her nose, the tiny scar near her eyebrow from the bike accident she had in college. My body remembered what it felt like to hold her. My mind remembered the messages from Elias. "I don't know if I can be with you again," I said. "I'm not asking you to decide today," she replied. "I'm asking you not to disappear without deciding at all." Her gaze dropped to my hands. "You left without a word," she added softly. "I get why, I do, but it felt like I was living with the consequences of my choices alone in that apartment, with your ghost in every room. I needed to see you in front of me, to see if you were still you." "I am," I said, "just changed." She nodded, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. "So am I," she said. We talked for hours. Details I didn't want but needed to hear. Where it started, how far it went, what she told herself to justify each step. By the time dusk settled outside, the room was dim, washed in that blue-gray light that makes everything look like a memory. "I should go," she said finally, voice hoarse. She picked up her bag, fingers trembling. At the door, she turned back. "If you ever want to try therapy coffee, even just one conversation where we're not standing in the middle of the wreckage, call me," she said. "If you don't, I'll understand. I won't push. The consequences are mine to carry." Her hand hovered over the doorknob. "Whatever you decide," she added, "I am so deeply sorry, not just for getting caught. For every moment I chose myself in the worst way, instead of choosing you in the right one." She opened the door slowly. The hallway was lit in that harsh fluorescent way that makes everyone look more tired. "Goodbye," she whispered. "Not see you later, not talk soon. Goodbye." I watched her step out into the bright, empty corridor, the sound of her footsteps fading. When the door clicked shut behind her, the apartment seemed to exhale. I stood there for a long time, hand on the doorknob, heart split between the life we had, the life she'd lived without me, and the life I had yet to choose. The room was quiet, too quiet. But in that quiet, beneath all the noise of anger and grief, a new question took shape. Not, do I still love her? I already knew the answer to that. The question was simpler and heavier. What does love even mean when trust is gone, and is there a version of me that can live with that? The answer did not arrive as some grand revelation. It came in small, unremarkable mornings. The first morning I woke up and didn't immediately reach for my phone to check if she had called. The morning I made coffee and realized I had started drinking it the way she liked it, too much sugar, and slowly, quietly, went back to my own way. The morning I walked past our old street and felt a pang, but not that crushing, breathless kind of pain. Just a gentle ache, like touching a bruise that has started to heal. We met twice more after she came to my apartment. Once in a cafe halfway between our places. It was raining outside, of course. The windows fogged slightly from the warmth inside, blurring the cars streaking by. We didn't talk about him much that time. We talked about us. Our childhoods, the pressure we both grew up under, to be good, to be grateful, to make things work no matter what. How those expectations had turned us into people who apologized for wanting more. "I thought asking for attention was selfish," she said, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "So I lowered my expectations instead of raising my voice, until it came out in the worst possible way. I thought needing reassurance meant I was insecure," I replied. "So I pretended I was fine, even when I wasn't. I didn't want to be too much, and somehow I ended up being not enough." We cried quietly in the middle of strangers who did not know they were sitting next to a postscript of someone's marriage. The second time we met was in the old apartment. We had decided practically that the lease was too heavy for her alone. I had found a new place, a quiet one-bedroom with morning light and creaky floors. She was going to move somewhere smaller. We spent a Saturday sorting through the remnants of our shared life, boxes labeled kitchen, books, misc. We held objects and weighed them not just by their function, but by the memories attached. The mug we bought on that impulsive weekend trip, the blanket we argued over in the store and then curled under every winter, the framed photo of us on the balcony before everything complicated. "Do you want this?" she asked, holding up the photo. I looked at it for a long time. Two younger versions of us, arms wrapped around each other, city lights blurring behind. "No," I said softly. "Not now." She nodded and for once didn't try to convince me otherwise. She wrapped it carefully, placed it in a box labeled later. As the afternoon light faded, the apartment grew more and more empty. Without our furniture, without our things, it was just walls and windows. The echoes of our laughter, our fights, our quiet dinners bounced off bare surfaces. We ended up in the living room, sitting on the floor with our backs against opposite walls. The space between us felt wider than any room. "I keep thinking about forgiveness," she said, voice soft. "Like it's this switch you flip. One day you don't forgive me and the next you do and everything is fine. But that's not how it works, is it?" "No," I said. "It's more like dropping weight a little at a time, realizing you can put things down without losing who you are." "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" she asked. I thought about the nights I lay awake replaying her words. About the way her face looked when I said I still loved her. About the way my own reflection had changed in bathroom mirrors. "I don't know yet," I answered, "but I'm starting to forgive myself." "For what?" she asked, surprised. "For not seeing sooner. For staying in versions of us that didn't exist anymore. For believing that loving someone meant absorbing all the hurt without boundary. For thinking your choices defined my worth." She looked down at her hands. "You were always worth more than what I gave you," she whispered. The room fell quiet, not that suffocating, charged silence from before, a different kind, sadder but calmer. "I think," I said slowly, "that we could both spend the rest of our lives trying to make this right. Going to therapy, rebuilding trust, checking each other's phones, promising, reassuring. We might even succeed somehow. But when I picture that life, there's always a shadow behind it. I don't know if I want to live with that shadow as the third person in our marriage." Her chin trembled. "So that's it?" she asked. "We're done." The word echoed in the empty room. "I don't know if love ever really ends," I said, "but the version of us that was married, yes, I think it needs to end for both of us to become who we're supposed to be now." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't argue. Didn't bargain, didn't promise she would be perfect if I just gave her one more chance. This is the consequence, she said quietly. Not you leaving that morning, not the silence. This. Living with the fact that I broke something I can never fully fix, and that the cost isn't just losing you, it's losing the person I was when you trusted me. Her shoulders shook, and for a moment, every part of me wanted to cross the room, hold her, say we could try anyway. That we could be one of those stories people tell about surviving infidelity and coming out stronger. But survival isn't always the same as living, and strength isn't always staying, so I stayed where I was. I don't hate you, I said. I don't think you're a monster. I think you were a person in pain who made a terrible, selfish choice, and I was a person in denial who made it easy to hide that pain. We both broke this. Just in different ways. She lifted her eyes to mine. What now? She asked. Now we let go, I said. Not all at once, not cleanly, but we stopped trying to drag the ghost of this marriage into futures where it doesn't belong. We finished packing in near silence. At the door, when everything was done, we stood facing each other one last time in the place we had once called home. Thank you, she said unexpectedly. For what? I asked. For not turning me into the worst version of myself in your mind, she replied. For still seeing the parts of me that were good, even when I didn't act like it. For leaving when you needed to, instead of staying and punishing me with resentment. I loved you, I said simply. She smiled, sad and small. You still do, she answered. And that somehow makes this hurt and heal at the same time. We hugged finally, not like lovers, not like spouses, like two people mourning the same loss from different angles. Her coat was cold against my cheek. Her hair smelled like the same shampoo. My body remembered, my heart remembered. We pulled away slowly. Goodbye, Maya, I said. Goodbye, she whispered. She walked down the hallway, out of the apartment, out of the frame of the life we'd built. I watched her until she turned the corner and disappeared. Morning came, as it always does. In the new place, sunlight spilled across the floor, catching dust motes in the air like tiny, drifting planets. The city hummed outside, distant but comforting. I made coffee the way I liked it, strong, a little bitter. I sat at the small kitchen table, alone but not hollow. I thought about her, about Elias wherever he was. About the version of me who thought love was enough to protect against anything. Forgiveness came to sit beside me in that chair, not as a dramatic feeling, but as a quiet decision. Not forgiveness for her, not yet. Forgiveness for myself. For loving deeply, for leaving when I had to, for accepting that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go of the life you convinced yourself you had to save. Outside, the sky was clear for the first time in days, no rain on the glass. Just soft morning light spilling across an empty chair across from me. Empty, but waiting. I took a slow sip of coffee, feeling its warmth spread through my chest. There was no dramatic closing line. No tidy lesson to tie everything together. Just this, she was living with the consequences of her choices, and I was finally learning to live with mine. Just this, she was living with the consequences of her choices, and I was finally learning to live with mine.